What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of At a Glance, the series in which I give you an appetizer, sampler, glimpse into a particular faction of 40k. The goal being to help you decide if you want to look further into that force or potentially collect that, be it your first force, your 10th force, doesn't matter. And by viewer request, the Astral Claws are what's on the chopping block. Requested, and I'm capable of doing them, so why not, right? So the Astral Claws were once a Loyalist Space Marine force. Then they are responsible for the Badab War, essentially, as they secede from the Imperium or try to, and then they're nearly destroyed, but their chapter master and around 200 or so survivors manage to escape and then become what we know as the Red Corsairs. So there's plenty to talk about Red Corsairs wise, but I'm just going to focus on the Astral Claw chapter itself, back when they were the Astral Claws. So that's what I'm going to focus on in this at a glance. And with that said, I want to make a special mention to a chapter called the Tiger Claws. They were originally the big bad of the Badab War and everything, but over time it has since become the Astral Claws, and what Forge World did is turn the Tiger Claws into a successor of the Astral Claws, which is fine. And they made them kind of a long lost chapter that is just a remnant of what it used to be, and I'll mention them again later on. But as you'll see, they have a very different color scheme from the Astral Claws. So, the Astral Claws are thought to be a 10th founding successor. They were founded to be one of the Maelstrom warders, looking over the rift known as the Maelstrom. It's considered the second largest warp anomaly thing, second to the Eye of Terror. So, the Warp Rift Maelstrom is what they and other chapters have been assigned to watch over, and they were given the honor of being appointed the overall masters of the Maelstrom Waters, meaning they basically were an overall command of the going-ons there. And through that's why they were able to essentially become very close with both the Mantis Warriors and the Lamenters. So that was their purpose, to overlook and ensure nothing comes out of there to threaten the Imperium. And in doing so, they were largely unsupported by the Imperium. Them and the other Maelstrom Zone chapters basically had to fend for themselves. The Imperium did not really support them too well, and as a result, they grew to rely on each other. And when ultimately the Astral Claws went renegade and seceded or tried to, the Lamenters and the Mantis Warriors felt it only natural to support their brother chapter, not realizing that they were corrupted. So, ultimately, the chapter undergoes some secret shifts in its outlook and its organization, even before Luft Huron, I'm just going to call him Huron, became chapter master. But once he did, he accelerated these changes and these shifts. And even before these secret changes and shifts, the Astral Claws continued to maintain a powerful fleet, as well as they spent plenty of time fortifying their system of Badab, and their particular bastion, they really created a strong one, the Palace of Thorns or something like that, on Badab Primaris, that was thought to basically be unbreakable. So they fortified their position, and then they started having the secret shift in its outlook and organization, and basically that was to become legion-sized. The Astral Claws had a desire, of which I really kind of like the concept of, and they're not the only chapter to have done this, mind you, but they wanted to be bigger than a standard chapter size, especially considering their situation. They're on the eastern fringe by the Maelstrom Rift. They were trying to grow in size, but that shift also meant they started viewing themselves less as just the protectors of the area and more the outright rulers, and basically overruling any imperial authority. They wanted to become the authority. So not so much like the Ultramar region of the Ultramarines, but more its own independent, completely independent empire thing, you could say. So thus they became more paranoid, and they continued bolstering their size, keeping it a secret from even their allies, and eventually raised a whole bunch of red flags, tried to secede, and caused the Badab War to happen. So at the height of their power, they were around 3,000 or so Space Marines. On top of that, the Tyrant of Badab, Huron, had his own Tyrant Legion, which was a core force of Space Marine officers who controlled and led a whole mass of human auxiliary forces, kind of like the Imperial Guard. And these forces were viewed as inferior in comparison to the Space Marine forces by the Astral Claws, and they were subsequently abused and used, you could say, because they formed cannon fodder and living shields, but their primary role was to basically secure the Badab sector and defend it. So directly under the Astral Claws command is a Space Marine force that's at least 3,000 Space Marines or so strong, and a huge number of human auxiliaries, making them a very powerful threat on their own. So that is basically the big reason why the Badab War happened. They did all of this, and then they tried to secede from the Imperium. And the Imperium didn't take kindly to that. So in doing this, the Astral Claws also formed specialized units. They had Retaliators, which are really brutal assault troops of Space Marines, and you could basically call your Vanguard veterans the Retaliators if you wanted to, just to kind of have a way to represent them with the Space Marine Codex. They had the Iron Hunter squads, and the Iron Hunter squads are basically bike formations, bike squads. So you could utilize this, or at least call your bike squadrons Iron Hunters. And then they had Corpse Takers, and Corpse Takers were specially tasked apothecaries, specialized apothecaries, you could say, that all they did was harvest gene seed from both friend and enemy alike for use within the Astral Claws forces. And this was considered the absolute most blasphemous thing to the other Space Marine forces once they found out about it. It didn't happen until the final days of the Badab War, and it was done in secret, of course. And, wow, I said that with a weird accent, of course. Let me get some coffee with that. Anyway, it was, of course, done in secret. And once it was found out, the Loyalist Space Marines hated the Astral Claws even more. And the Executioners, who were on the side of the Astral Claws at the time, felt that their honor was satisfied. They were disgusted with the Astral Claws, and they became a true rogue element. Basically, they still fought against the Imperial forces if they pressed the issue, but they went about their own business and attacked the Astral Claws as well, doing their own thing. So the Corpse Takers didn't really help out in that respect too much, but they did it as kind of a last-ditch effort to harvest gene seed for the Astral Claws. So that is some info into the Astral Claws themselves. They kept everything a secret, even from their allies, which is why they had ally support. So their combat doctrine was always favoring rapid strikes and a strong, relentless attack. They utilized bikers, they utilized dreadnoughts a lot, they were competent pretty well in boarding actions, so they never met a foe that they would not challenge. They never met a foe that they didn't think they could not beat. It was a little bit of overconfidence on their side, but they were really favoring rapid strikes and relentless assaulting and attacks into the enemy. So that's kind of how they play, which means, hey, really open-ended for how you want to represent that. Now, with that said, when you look at the appearance of the Astral Claws, they're silver armored with blue shoulder pad inset and gold accenting. And sometimes the shoulder pads are not blue at all, sometimes both shoulder pads are blue, and sometimes only one shoulder pad is blue. It really depends on your preference there. There's no real rhyme or reason that I can see. Terminators have both their shoulder pads blue. Huron himself, who was in Terminator armor at the time, has both his shoulder pads blue and other blue accenting as well as gold accenting. So basically silver, blue, and gold is what you're looking at here. Their chapter symbol is what I call a side profile of a tiger, but you could say it's a side profile of a female lion or some other type of predatory feline, whatever, right? My point is it's a side profile of a predatory cat's head. in yellow and black. And then during the time of the Badab War and a little bit before it, Huron's official heraldry, his own personal heraldry called the Tyrant's Claw, became widespread by the chapter as well in terms of its use. So you'll have some Marines with the Tyrant's Claw symbol on them, some with the Astral Claw symbol on them, and then who knows, maybe you could be crazy and put both, one on each shoulder pad if you wanted to. That point it's really kind of up to you. Now for representing them, I'd utilize the just the Space Marine Codex, the regular Space Marine Codex. Forge Worlds, Imperial Armor Book 9, the Badab War Book 1 is going to essentially have everything you need to represent the Tyrant's Legion and the Astral Claws as a force if you want to go full on Forge World rules for them. And that's cool. I have no problem with Forge World rules myself, but for events, leagues, campaigns, tournaments, stuff like that, typically you are not allowed to run Forge World stuff. So even if you want to go heavily Forge World with your list building and everything, I recommend building a second list that's just utilizing GW's codex, and that's it. And in that case, whatever chapter tactic from that codex, because Forge World did create a chapter tactic just for the Astral Claws, but that wouldn't be usable if you're just utilizing GW's stuff. So really whatever chapter tactic you feel fits best for the way you want to represent them, I would say utilize. Now Forge World has Huron's model, it has their Master of the Forge model. Both are cool. The Master of the Forge model you could just make use of as a Tech Marine with Conversion Beamer, no problem. Huron's model is very cool, and building it as is will present some problems for representing it, because you can't take a Heavy Flamer with your HQ, but I'm sure if you just give it some thought you'll figure out what you could say it is in comparison. But he looks cool like that, why not build him like that? Anyways, with that said, they also have some shoulder pads from Forge World that have the Tyrant's Claw on it, but what I definitely recommend if you're going to go Astral Claws and you really want to go for it is to pick up Forge World's decal sheet for them. It has all the symbols you need on there, and I don't think you'll need more than what's on that sheet. If you do, I'd be surprised. Well, unless you're building a 10,000 point force or something. But anyways, aside from that, all GW basic Space Marine products will work. Remember, this is pre-Chaos Taint, this is pre-Chaos Space Marine status, pre-Red Corsair status, so you don't need any Chaos bits. Really, just normal Space Marine kits will work just fine. So with that said, that's really all I can think of to say in terms of a glimpse of the Astral Claws. Depending upon when you want to represent them will determine kind of what symbols you utilize and whatnot. If you want to represent them at the height of their power, then the Tyrant's Claw mark will definitely be usable for you. But if you want to represent them back in the day when they were purely loyal, before their corruption you could say, then I would not make use of the Tyrant's Claw personally. But aside from that, that is really it. So thanks for sticking through it. If you have any questions, comments, or requests, leave them in the comment section, and hopefully somebody found this interesting. So until next time, take it easy.